Welcome to Box Recaps. Today I'm going to explain the movie The Martian, released in the year 2015. The movie starts and we're taken to 2035, where we see the crew of the Ares 3 mission to Mars is exploring Acidalia Planitia on Martian Solar Day 18 of their 31 Sol expedition. The crew consists of Commander Melissa Lewis, botanist Mark Watney, IT guru Beth Johansson, pilot Rick Martinez, flight surgeon Chris Beck, and navigator and chemist Alex Vogel. As they're out there to gather some samples, the crew goes on to learn that a heavy storm is approaching them. This leads Melissa Lewis to abort the mission right away, and she orders everyone to get back to their Mars ascent vehicle, also called MAV. Mark Watney, however, argues for waiting it out and brings up the rear as the crew heads toward MAV. MAV is the only way they can get back to the orbiting Hermes. Heavy winds and sand gusts surround them. A satellite dish breaks off and strikes Watney, knocking him out of sight of the rest of the crew. Lewis tries to guide the others to find Watney, but visibility is very poor, and the storm is way too strong for them. They head back into the MAV without Watney and lift off. The pilot, Martinez, is barely able to keep the rocket from toppling, but the launch from the planet is successful. The crew has left, and when the storm dies down on Mars, we see that Mark is still alive, but his condition is not good. A rod from his own equipment has gotten stabbed into his body, and he is in a lot of pain. He manages to get up and makes his way to their camp, which he, with his crew, built for shelter when they came. Mark then goes on to take out the rod from his body and tends to his own wound. He looks around and is shattered to see that everything in the camp has been destroyed by the violent storm. So he now has no way to contact anyone from his team. Mark is now stranded on this planet alone, while his crew members mourn his death, thinking he is no more. We learn that in order to be able to get out of there, he is going to have to wait for 4 long years, because it'll be 4 years before the next manned mission is launched. And with the food supply and habitat meant for him and the other 5 crew members, he has almost a year's worth of food, or a little longer if he rations. Therefore, Watney determines that he has to grow 3 years' worth of food on a planet where nothing grows. Luckily for him, he is a botanist and devises a plan to grow potatoes. One problem is that the next manned mission on Mars is going to be 3,200 kilometers from where he currently is, so he is going to have to go to that location if he wants to be found by NASA. On top of that, in order to be able to get himself some food, he has planned on growing potatoes, but he is going to need a lot of water to make this land fertile, and there is no water on Mars. He, however, is a botanist, so he does have a lot of knowledge. He goes on to gather a lot of soil in one place, and puts potatoes in it. Another good news for him is that he knows how he can make water, so he gets started on that too. He's able to make water as well. As days go by, he keeps watering the little field he has, and he is finally able to see the first pair of leaves getting out of the soil. Mark is thrilled to see this, because this means he's going to be able to survive out there. Back on Earth, NASA Director Teddy Sanders holds a press conference to announce that while the Hermes crew succeeded in leaving Mars, Mark Watney was lost, and he is declared dead. They even go on to have a big funeral for him. At NASA, Mars mission director Vincent Kapoor talks to Sanders about getting satellite time to locate Watney's body. Sanders refuses on the grounds that the satellite feeds are public and broadcasting pictures of Watney's corpse would be a political and budgetary disaster for NASA. Later, engineer Mindy Park meets with Kapoor after she discovers evidence of activity in satellite photos of the Ares 3 site. It is noted that the solar panels have been cleaned and the rover has moved. They bring in Sanders and Director of Media Relations, Annie Montrose, to show them that Watney is still alive, because that is the only explanation. Their superior officer goes on to say that they know he is alive, but by the time they get there to take him back to Earth, Mark is going to be dead by then with hunger. He is right to some extent, because they're going to have to fly for months to get to Mars from Earth. They are well aware that Watney does not have enough food, but they have no idea what he's doing up there. On the other hand, as Watney continues to work on his food supply, he keeps going with the video logs, and decides to use a rover to make it to the Schiaparelli crater that will be the landing site for Ares 4 in 4 years. Since the battery-powered rover can't cover the whole distance, he modifies it, adding solar cells and an extra battery. To conserve battery power, the pod of plutonium used to get the crew to Mars in their original spacecraft serves as a heat source in the cabin. On the other hand, back at NASA, his colleague is now concerned for him, and they start making preparations to get food supplies to Watney. They, however, will have to work for 3 months to get prepared for this. And the MAV will then take 9 months to get to Mars where Watney is, so it is roughly a year before they are able to send him some food. It has now been 79 sol days, and his potatoes are now ripe. He is, however, well aware that if he is not able to get connected to NASA, he will not be able to survive, despite the fact that he is able to crop potatoes. So he uses the rover to find a Pathfinder probe that stopped transmitting in 1997. He hopes to use it to get in touch with NASA. He digs the old probe out of the sand, spreads its solar panels to charge the batteries, and discovers that it still works. Using handwritten signs for the Pathfinder's camera, he is able to send a message to NASA confirming that he is alive. Kapoor is able to receive the message because he and colleagues at the Jet Propulsion Lab have pulled another Pathfinder out of storage, rounded up the engineers who worked on it, and got it working again. They are now able to see Mark Watney. He then asks them through signboards whether they are able to see him, and they reply in yes, which makes Mark happy that his people know that he is still alive. NASA uses this system to tell him how to hack the rover's operating system so it can transmit text back to Earth. When Watney, finally able to type his messages chat style, asks how the Hermes crew took the news that he wasn't dead, Kapoor regretfully tells him that the crew hasn't been told. Watney responds with obscenities, not realizing that he has become a public figure and that the whole world is able to see what he is typing. His crew is still on their way back to Earth, and NASA finally goes on to tell them all that Watney is still alive. They're met with mixed emotions when they learn that Watney is still alive. They're happy that he's not dead, but they're not happy about the fact that they left him there all alone on a whole planet. They, however, are not able to do anything about it now. The news leaves them guilt-ridden, but Henderson tells them that Watney has stressed repeatedly that it wasn't their fault, and they had reason to believe that he was dead. The people at NASA now go on to tell him that they can reach him by Sol 868, and the rations he has with him will be able to survive till Sol 900, so he should be fine. But things begin to go bad for Watney when the habitat's worn-out airlock explosively decompresses, throwing the airlock some distance while he's inside it and causing his helmet to crack and leak. He uses duct tape to seal the cracks and stumbles back to the habitat to discover his potato crop frozen and dead. With less food, he now figures he can last only a little more than 300 sols, or a little longer than that if he is careful. He realizes that he will be dead before NASA is able to reach him. NASA contacts him and goes on to tell him that he's going to have to eat as least food as possible in order to be able to survive till the time they get to him. NASA and JPL work overtime and quickly launch a probe to resupply Watney. To make their launch as quick as possible, they do not do the proper testing for the probe, and moments after launching, the probe's trajectory shifts severely and it swerves off course and explodes. All the people at NASA are shattered at the realization that they might never be able to see Watney. Watney too now starts losing hope and goes on to write a message for NASA in which he tells them to let his parents know that their son is not giving up hope, and that he is still fighting and will fight till his last breath, but they should be prepared for any outcome. He writes that his parents should know that he loves his job and he is good at it too. So even if he died on this mission, they should celebrate him because he is going to die for a cause that is greater than himself. Meanwhile, in China, 2 directors from the Chinese National Space Administration, Zhu Tao and Guo Ming, witness the explosion and discuss helping NASA by offering their classified booster rocket technology to launch a supply craft. Guo Ming asks Zhu Tao why NASA has not already asked for their help, and Zhu Tao reminds him that it is a top-secret program that NASA would not have any knowledge of. They decide that in the interests of international scientific cooperation, they will contact NASA and offer their booster rocket. We then see another character named Rich Purnell, who is a brilliant astrodynamicist, and he comes up with a plan. He says that if they're able to use the Hermes that is coming back to Earth from Mars, they might be able to save Watney. He says that they will accelerate the returning Hermes around Earth, will give it a gravitational slingshot and send it back to Mars to get Watney. He adds that they can use the Chinese rocket and will resupply the Hermes for its extended voyage. Sanders, however, does not like this idea because it risks the lives of the 5 Hermes crew members and will extend their mission by 533 days. But Henderson secretly sends the plan and Purnell's course calculations to the crew. The crew talks it over. They understand that the surreptitious arrival of the plan means that NASA brass have rejected the idea. They assume that if they go back to Mars, the 2 military members, Lewis and Martinez, will be court-martialed for mutiny, and the 3 civilians will never be allowed to fly another mission. Lewis calls for a unanimous vote, and they all agree to go back for Watney. Johansson hacks the Hermes computers to prevent NASA from taking control, and they change course. NASA sees them changing course, and they're now on board with it. They go on to use the Chinese help to get them supplies. On the other hand, Sanders realizes that Henderson is behind this, so he asks for Henderson's resignation when the mission is over. Then he's forced to announce that NASA is sending Hermes back to Mars to rescue Watney. After the Hermes has swung around Earth and collected the supplies, they travel back to Mars. NASA and the rest of the world watch with anticipation. With 12 minutes delay, no one on Earth can help by radio. Watney has to remove 5,000 kilograms of weight from the MAV to make it light enough to reach Hermes' orbit. He jettisons most of the seats, all the navigation and control systems, and replaces the nose cone airlock, a crucial structural piece and the single heaviest component, with a tarp. Watney goes on to launch himself into the orbit, and the pressure is too much. By the time he gets to the orbit, he is knocked unconscious because of the high pressure. Watney, however, gets back to his senses after a while, but there's another problem. Watney is constantly moving around the orbit, and it is not easy to get a hold of him because he's moving too fast. Watney talks to Lewis, saying he's going to make a hole in his suit and will get himself in the direction of Hermes to get them with pressure of the air. His colleagues, however, tell him not to do any such thing because it could be fatal for him. On the other hand, Hermes' speed is also very fast. They decide to explode one of the engines to slow themselves down, and it works. They can now see Watney coming towards them. Lewis now gets out on a flying chair to get a hold of Watney, and he punctures the palm of his glove to propel himself toward Lewis with the escaping air jet, but he has no control over himself and ends up missing her. However, he runs into the rope with which Lewis himself has been tied to the spaceship. Seeing that he has now gotten hold of the rope, the crew is able to reel them in right away, and they now have Watney. They right away announce to NASA that they have Watney. After returning to Earth, Watney becomes a survival instructor for astronaut candidates. He is now a national hero, and everyone knows and respects him for the courage and valor he showed up there. And this is exactly what he wants to teach to the other kids. He tells them of his struggle on Mars, confirming that he did in fact grow food using his own excrement, and humorously says he doesn't want to discuss that aspect of the mission again. He tells them that if things should go south for them, they can either accept their fate or start solving problems, because that's how you survive, by overcoming one problem after another. 5 years later, as the Ares 5 is about to launch, those involved in Watney's rescue are seen in their current lives. And with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.